Who are the most underrated NFL players in the game today? What's going on, football fans? It's Mitch back here with another NFL video. And in this video, the most underappreciated, the most discredited, the most slept on, the players that need more love, the most underrated players in the game, one for each and every team, all 32. My pick for the most underrated player on your favorite team. If that sounds good, don't forget to spike the like button and subscribe for more NFL content just like this. If we get 100 likes on this video, I will give you my most overrated player for all 32 teams as a part 2 to this video. But first, let's talk about the underappreciated, the guys that need to be celebrated more for what they provide your favorite team. Let's go in alphabetical order, man, beginning with the Arizona Cardinals, Dennis Gardeck. Last season, the leading sacker for Gannon's defense in Arizona, the edge rusher who had 6 sacks, and according to Pro Football Focus, 40 pressures, which tied for 52nd in football, and their PRP metric, pass rushing productivity metric, he scored a 10, which is very high, ranking him 13th in the NFL for his per snap ability to provide pressure on the quarterback. So Dennis Gardeck, probably the best pass rusher on the Cardinals last season. Nobody really knows who he is except for Cardinals fans, and he's expected to play another big role in 2024. He was even a captain on the team before he was ever a good pass rusher. I believe he played a big role on special teams and was a little bit of a here and there role player, off-ball linebacker, edge rusher, special teamer. That guy's been wearing the C, though, and he definitely deserves some more appreciation. So give some love to Dennis Gardeck. Next up, Drew Dalman, center of the Atlanta Falcons. One of the low-key best centers in the NFL. He graded as the 6th best zone blocker in the NFL at all offensive line positions, among all offensive linemen, okay? 3rd best graded center in 2023, and the 3rd best graded run blocker at the center position. Atlanta, probably the strength of their football team has been their offensive line the last couple of seasons. That will continue to be the engine of the team in 2024. And Drew is the one that is at the command, right? He is the center, and he is a beast, opening up holes for Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. And I look forward to that offense, that offensive line, and this man in the middle in 2024. So give some love to Drew Dalman and the Atlanta Falcon offensive line. Next up, Keaton Mitchell, running back of the Baltimore Ravens. Last season, Keaton Mitchell was one of the most explosive playmakers in football when he was on the football field. I was like, who is this kid? Every time he touches the football, it is a touchdown. Like, it's a massive play. At least that's the way it felt. Last season, he was actually the highest graded running back, according to PFF, in the NFL. Now, he does not reach the minimum snap threshold to actually be the highest graded running back. But if you filter out the snap percentage, he was actually the best running back in the game on a per play basis last season. He also averaged a just mind-numbing 8.4. I'll say it again. 8.4 yards per carry and 10.3 yards per reception. So there's been a lot of buzz and a lot made of Derrick Henry signing with the Ravens, but they've got Keaton Mitchell. So Derrick Henry, you're going to have to take a couple snaps off because this kid coming back from injury, he's still going to be pretty dangerous, and I would want to give him the football based on what he did as a rookie. For the Buffalo Bills, Christian Benford, cornerback. Low-key, one of the better corners in football last year and really rising up the ranks. I think he fits that Bills, Sean McDermott zone defense perfectly. Smart player, grading as the 8th best corner in football last year, 7th in coverage grade, and he was the 2nd best corner in missed tackle rate. So a guy that's a sure tackler in the run game and the pass game. He's going to come up and make that play, and it's secure. He's also very savvy in coverage, and he held his own against some of the best receivers in the game on the perimeter for the Bills defense. A lot of people wondering about, Tre'Davious White is gone. Well, he's been gone for a while, okay? Christian Benford, Rasul Douglas, they've been holding it down in the back end of this defense. Teron Johnson as well. All 3 of those guys could really have made this list, but Christian Benford is the least known of the bunch. One of the better secondaries in the NFL, especially at the corner position. The Bills do not get the respect they deserve. Next up, Xavier Woods of the Carolina Panthers. Woods has been around the NFL. He's played for the Cowboys. If I'm not mistaken, he played for the Vikings. And now he made his way to Carolina. And Woods, this season might have been his best season of his career. It might not even be might. It might be like certain that it was his best season of his career, but unfortunately it was for the worst team in the league. But allow me to explain why he's so underrated. First of all, he's been in the league for a while and nobody really knows him. The only way they might know his name is based on the wrestler. That's probably the only way they know who he is. But other than that, 2nd best passer rating allowed at the safety position last season. 2nd in forced incompletion percentage as well, and then the 12th overall graded safety in the NFL. So the man was elite in coverage last year, forcing incompletions, forcing interceptions, making plays on the ball, and just generally not allowing any sort of catches into his area of the field. Woods has been a versatile safety, but in Carolina, he's really played his best. So maybe it's the scheme, the coaching, but this is somebody I look forward to watching in a little bit of a rebuilt secondary for Carolina this year. I think it could be one of the more underrated units in the league, led by this veteran safety, Xavier Woods. Tevin Jenkins is the Chicago Bears pick. Tevin Jenkins was the 14th graded guard in football. A 2nd round pick once upon a time that was actually drafted, I believe, to be a tackle, specifically possibly a right tackle. I think they tried him at right and left, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's played tackle and guard in his career, but he has really found a home at the guard position. In his young career, he's played tackle and he's played both guard positions, left and right guard. But again, when he's played guard, he's been really good, right? This past season, 14th in PFF grade. He was 3rd in 2022. So just staying healthy, Tevin Jenkins, hopefully in 2024, I think could be like in that Pro Bowl type of caliber and range. He is ascending as one of the better guards in football, and nobody has really noticed. So this is a guy that will provide some time and open up some run gaps and holes for that Chicago offense for the new Caleb Williams attack. I'm excited, but Tevin Jenkins, a good player already that has just kind of continued to stay consistent and keeps getting better. So that's nice to see for the Bears offensive line, that it was not long ago they were pretty bad. Next up, Cam Taylor-Britt of the Cincinnati Bengals. Cam Taylor-Britt, cornerback, was one of my favorite corners in the league last year to watch. He is their number 1 corner on the perimeter, and statistically speaking, he was 9th in reception percentage allowed. He was 16th in passer rating allowed, and he had 4 interceptions on the season. And he did not play every game last year, but in the games that were marquee and big games, he often stood out. And I just like his combination of size, ball skills, ability to play man, ability to play zone, press. He has a very diverse skill set, but very savvy in playing the ball. I look forward to what he can do this year, providing that this past season wasn't really a fluke. He'll be expected to be their number 1 perimeter corner in 2024, and I think he's definitely ready to be that this year, hopefully just staying healthy for all 17 games and potentially the playoffs. The Cleveland Browns, another corner, step up to the plate. Martin Emerson Jr. Martin Emerson, 29 passes defensed in 2 seasons. That's crazy. That is crazy. 4 picks this past season, and the 4th best passer rating allowed, as well as the 4th best reception percentage allowed in 2024. Martin Emerson had to step up with the injuries to the secondary in Cleveland. He largely started for the Browns defense, arguably the best defense in football. And what made them so unique was their ability to play man coverage at a pretty high rate, to be able to rush 4, but then also rely on their secondary to cover in the back end, mix up their coverages, mix up their blitzes, mix up how many they're sending. And when you have a strong secondary, that's what it enables you to do. And having a guy like Martin Emerson who can match up with opposing wide receivers is very crucial. But he's also somebody that has proven through his young career, I believe only 2 or 3 seasons into his career, he has provided an ability to play the ball at a really high level. Like 29 passes defense is crazy. And he consistently forces incomplete passes. That's been the case in his young career. So really good player, really underrated. A lot of people talk about Denzel Ward, but Emerson needs more respect. Osa Odighizuwa of the Dallas Cowboys is my selection. I would say he's been their most underrated player over the last couple of seasons. In Dallas, the 19th graded interior defensive lineman, 14th in pass rushing grade, 8th best pass rush win rate on true pass snaps. Odighizuwa has been just a terror on the interior of this defensive line. Great quickness, great ability to get that interior push for the Cowboys defense. I'm a little bit intrigued to see how the scheme change, losing Dan Quinn, affects his game. He's a little bit undersized, which does affect him in the run game. But as a pure pass rusher, he is one of the better ones in the league. You would put him inside that top 10 area, I really think, and nobody really thinks of him that way. I would say he's definitely one of the 30 best defensive tackles in the league. And again, because Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence are on the defensive line, this guy doesn't get enough respect, but Odighizuwa is a really good one for the Cowboys. Quinn Miners of the Denver Broncos is a premier guard in this league, 1st in run block grade, 3rd overall at the guard position, according to Pro Football Focus and their grading last year. And the year previous, 2022, he was the 6th highest graded guard. So for 2 consecutive seasons, Quinn has been a top 6 guard, according to Pro Football Focus. And that just generally should get you some admiration, respect, and some sort of recognition, but it really hasn't. I never hear or have heard this guy's name brought up in any sort of Pro Bowl conversation or any sort of like top tier guard conversation, but he certainly does belong in that conversation at this point. It's not like he's exactly been on the greatest team in the world, but he continues to show out for the Denver Broncos. For the Detroit Lions, Efatu Melifonwu. I had to take a second to pronounce his first name correctly, but Melifonwu, who I recall, I want to say it was his brother, who was on the Raiders. He played briefly for the Patriots, but this kid has really become something. I thought last year, every time I would watch the Lions defense down the stretch, he stood out in a pretty massive and major way. In the playoffs, he was a huge impact player, especially in terms of his pass rush. When you look at his pass rushing stuff, he had 3 sacks in the regular season, and then he had another 2.5 or 3 sacks in the playoffs. He was Week 16's NFC Defensive Player of the Week, and he also made some plays in coverage as well. He had 2 interceptions on the year. So Melifonwu, really athletic, but I felt like over the last half of the season, he was just making great plays based on instincts, whether it was in coverage, reacting to the football, or whether it was near the line of scrimmage. He really has that diverse skill set where he's able to kind of play all over the place, and definitely has, in Aaron Glenn's defense, been one of those blitzers that they like to bring off the edge, get that extra guy in the box. But yeah, he's somebody to really look forward to in 2024. I could see him really ascending and taking a major step forward and maybe catapulting himself into a pretty serious safety conversation. But Melon Fonwu really impressed me late last season. Zach Tom is my selection for the Green Bay Packers. Zach Tom, over the past 2 seasons, his first 2 in the NFL, has been one of the better tackles in the NFL. This past year, he was the 15th highest graded tackle according to PFF with the 6th highest run block grade. And he can play any position on the offensive line. He was drafted to do such, guard, center, tackle, and he's found his way at the tackle position. That's really hard to do immediately. He was thought of to have maybe not long enough arms or whatever, but he's so technically sound. He came to the NFL so ready to play, and he's just immediately found a home as a really good run blocker in the Packers system. Maybe a little bit weaker in terms of his true pass blocking skills in the dropback situations, but as a run blocker, really good in the zone scheme, off those play action looks, really good, and just seems to be a very smart and savvy player at a young age. So Zach Tom can basically be a really good player at any of the offensive line spots, but he happens to play arguably the most important one at the tackle position. So Zach Tom, to me, just doesn't get enough recognition. The Packers offensive line doesn't get enough recognition. That's why he's my selection. Christian Harris, linebacker of the Houston Texans. Harris didn't have many amazing statistics to really bring up other than the fact that he led the Texans in solo tackles with 65. But every time I watched the Texans play, Christian Harris really felt like a player that took a huge step forward. I think he's got great speed and great range and great lateral ability to cover a lot of space in the ground game, but he's also got really good range and coverage, the ability to play zone, and the way that D'Amico likes to play his defense, they did bring in Al-Shaair from the outside, from former San Francisco teams, and then the Titans last year. But don't get it mistaken, like Harris is going to be that rangy cover backer. Well, I feel like Al-Shaair is more designed to go get the football in the run game, and I think they complement each other very well. But I was extremely impressed with Harris, especially in those last couple of games of the Texans season. I thought he really showed out big time. So I'm excited for him in his 3rd year in the NFL, 3rd or 4th year in the NFL, but expecting big things from him this season. Samson Ebukam of the Indianapolis Colts is just a perennial underrated player. He's been underrated his entire career. He played in Los Angeles with the Rams, maybe even St. Louis. I think just Los Angeles, but he played with the Rams and he was underrated and not given enough credit. I believe he played on their 2018 Super Bowl appearance team. He went to San Francisco, was underrated in San Francisco, and now he's probably the best he's ever been, and he's still underrated in Indianapolis. He had the best season of his career by a pretty wide margin according to PFF, grading as the 14th best edge rusher in football, which I don't think a lot of people would bring up Samson Ebukam in a top 20 edge rusher conversation, but he was really that good last year. 10th in overall run defense grade, which has always been a strength of his, the ability to set the edge and play with power in his hands. And then 9.5 sacks, which was the best of his career by a wide margin. But what helped him was really playing in that Gus Bradley, pin your ears back type of defense, and he was able to go and get it. But the Colts have a pretty scary defensive line overall, and especially an edge rotation now. They used a 1st-round pick on their edge rush in Latu. They've got Ebukam, they've got Kwity Paye, so it's one of the more underrated groups in the league. And Ebukam he's just one of those guys that's been underrated his entire career in every stop, and he's played a lot of different type of defenses. So I really like him, always been a fan of his for the Colts. Andre Sisco of the Jacksonville Jags is my selection. Just a true center field safety, a guy that is not going to have like crazy stats in terms of tackles, in terms of, run stops or blitz assignments where he's getting sacks. Like, he's not going to have a filled box score or whatever. So it's going to be hard to kind of measure out what he does, other than the fact that he is a ball hawk. He had 4 picks in 2023. He had 7 in his first couple years in the NFL. The last 2 years, he's had 7 picks, right, for this past season. So he keeps ascending as a player and as a ball hawk. And I just love his range. He kind of does play like a Jesse Bates type of player, where he's got great speed. He can fly sideline to sideline. He can knock people out in midair, and he can really drive on the football from, really far back in the secondary. So I'm excited to see what he can do in Nielsen's defense this year, the one that did have Jesse Bates as their free safety. So I'm excited for Andre Sisco. I think he could really take another step this season. Trey Smith of the Kansas City Chiefs is their most underrated player. I could have went with a couple different players, but it's hard to find one on the multi-time back-to-back Super Bowl champs, but Trey Smith really is super underrated. I mean, I think you could argue that he was their most consistent and best offensive lineman this season. Joe Thuney got hurt. I think Creed Humphrey is very good, but I don't think he was quite as good as last year. Trey Smith has been right there in terms of his performance with both Joe Thuney and, Creed Humphrey, and those are the guys that get more attention. Obviously, the tackles are always scrutinized and criticized, and obviously we always talk about Travis Kelce, Isaiah Pacheco, Patrick Mahomes, and even others over Trey Smith on this offense. But the offensive line is what has allowed the Chiefs to be so consistent the last 2 seasons, despite not having great receiver talent all the time. And you look at what he's been able to do in his first 3 years in the NFL. Most snaps in the NFL at the guard position, this past season, which is a huge stat in its own right. Like, he played basically every game for the Chiefs, never missed a play, never missed a snap, played every playoff game, and he played at a high level. He's really good in the run game, 8th in run block grade, never lower than 15th overall at the guard position in his first 3 seasons in the NFL. He really gives me Shaq Mason vibes. Right? He gives me those Shaq Mason vibes. Really good power run game guard, but just super consistent in most facets of his game and nearly never misses a game. Trey Smith has been hugely impactful to this Chiefs dynasty and does not get enough credit for it. Robert Spillane of the Las Vegas Raiders really shocked me with his performance last year. That's why he's included on this list, both as a leader, but overall as just a linebacker. I've never seen him play at this level. He was always good on special teams in Pittsburgh and in spot kind of like rotation situations in Pittsburgh. But last year with the Raiders, he showed a level of instincts, a level of coverage ability that I didn't think he possessed. He had 3 picks last year. He had 3.5 sacks. He had 148 tackles. He graded 6th in run defense. He graded 3rd in pass rush grade among all linebackers. He's a perfect fit for the Raiders' new defensive scheme. And man, I'm just blown away by his evolution as kind of a late career breakout and his impact on the pass rush, his impact as an extra blitzer, his impact as a run defender, and even in coverage was way more than I would have expected. So Spillane has become a leader of that defense that is highly underappreciated in the middle of the Raider D. Alohi Gilman of the Los Angeles Chargers is one of the most underappreciated safeties in the league. Last year, he was one of the best in the league. 5th best coverage grade in the NFL at safety. 7th best forced incompletion percentage. He's got great range, great instincts. I recall an awesome interception one-on-one with Stephon Diggs against the Buffalo Bills that Gilman was able to make, diving in the air and catching it and kind of shocking Josh Allen on that one. But Gilman is a really good player. I don't think enough people kind of understand that great safety duo they now have in Los Angeles, thanks to the ways that Gilman kind of complements what Derwin James is best at, which Gilman is more of a deep range safety, while Derwin James is more of a do-it-all versatile weapon in that front end of the defense. But look out for Gilman in 2024. I'm intrigued to see how Minter and Harbaugh use him with the Chargers this year. Ernest Jones, linebacker of the Los Angeles Rams. I've been a huge fan of for the last, I want to say, three years. Ernest Jones has really become one of the best linebackers in the league. Super reliable, incredibly high football IQ. 145 tackles, 4.5 sacks. He was really good this year. 7th in run defense grade, 6th best pass rushing grade, 13th overall for Ernest Jones this year, and the Rams, a true breakout season. Ernest Jones is just one of those players. He's not the fastest, he's not the biggest, but he plays really physical, and he's got great instincts, and he's very smart. It takes a lot for a linebacker to coordinate all these young players on that Rams defense, and Ernest Jones was the one doing that, so I give him a lot of credit. Javon Holland for the Miami Dolphins is my selection. This might be one where a lot of people are like, Javon Holland, we know who that is. A lot of people that watch the Bottom Line View, but I kind of feel like Javon Holland is a player that does not get enough love on a wide level, because Miami, it's often about the offense. It's about the speed of the receivers or the running backs, or it's about Mike McDaniel, or it's about Tua and his haircut, or it's about even like the front seven. Christian Wilkins was there, or Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips. Like, nobody talked about Javon Holland. Like, Jalen Ramsey's there, but Holland might be their best defensive player. Like, he is that good. He is one of the best safeties in the league. Third highest graded safety in football last year. Fourth in coverage grade, 11th in run defense, one of only 4 safeties to rank top 12 in both categories, joining the likes of Antoine Winfield, Jesse Bates, which are arguably 2 of the 3 best safeties in the league, and Jabril Peppers of my Patriots. The only thing Holland needs to do is stay healthy. Otherwise, he's got the complete package. He's a good tackler. He's physical for a guy that is more of a speed and kind of range safety. And man, shout out to his Canadian heritage. He lived, not long from where I'm at, right now. So shout out to the Hollands. I remember being in a running camp with them. They played football here in BC. So shout out to the Hollands, but he's become, an incredible player. And I just don't think he gets enough love as being an elite safety. Like, you never really hear his name. You hear Winfield, you hear Minka, you hear, all these guys, Jesse Bates, but you don't hear Holland, and I think he deserves to be in that conversation. Josh Metellus, another safety of the Minnesota Vikings, is my selection. Why? Josh Metellus was one of 3 Viking safeties that played a ton of snaps, like over 1,000. Bynum was another one, I believe, and Harrison Smith, of course, was the other. And Metellus largely played along the line of scrimmage, but he led all safeties in the NFL in pass play stops, which means basically a pass play resulting in a negative for the offense. And that's because, of his ability to tackle, his ability to have instincts, his ability to read, diagnose, and play in that Flores scheme and know exactly what to do at all times. He's also, really effective as a pass rusher. He had 29 pressures, not 29 tackles, 29 pressures, which was 9 more than second place at the safety position. So extremely effective as a guy that could disrupt the quarterback, be sneaky off the edge and create some pressure, create a dangerous potential game-changing play for that defense. So I think Metellus is a fun one to watch in his role, but also a sneaky underrated player. Jahlani Tavai is my pick for my favorite team, the Patriots. I could have went with a lot of different players on this defense, including Jabril Peppers, Anthony Jennings, Dietrich Wise. There's a number of guys that I could have gone with, but Jahlani Tavai is not only one of the more underrated linebackers in the league, but I think he's one of the most developed, one of the most improved linebackers in the league. I remember, a few years ago, he was not a very good player. It seemed like he was too slow, and he really couldn't play in the modern NFL. But when you watch him now, he has grown so much in his coverage ability to the point where he overall was the 4th graded linebacker in the NFL last year, according to PFF. And it wasn't just for run defense or pass rushing ability, which is what you would expect a Patriot linebacker to be for, but it was also coverage ability. His coverage and his run defense grade were both 82 plus, which was only one of 4 other linebackers in the entire NFL, like in the groups of like Demario Davis types. So Tavai is a really good player. Like, don't sleep on how good this guy is. 2 picks, 2 forced fumbles, 110 tackles, very, very well-rounded statistics last season. Can pretty much do it all for this defense. Fits the mold of that Teddy Bruschi big linebacker, off-the-ball linebacker of the Patriots, where he can be a sledgehammer in the run game. But he's also grown a ton in terms of instincts and IQ and ability to kind of overcome maybe a lack of speed and coverage to be in the right position at the right time. But Tavai, he's played on the edge. He's played linebacker. Really solid player for the Patriots. Paulson Adebo is my selection for the New Orleans Saints. I think last season had a streak where he was one of the best corners in the league. Overall, he graded 15th according to PFF. And when it comes to breaking up passes, he was elite. 19 forced incompletions, which tied for the most in football. He also was 13th in passer rating allowed. So he was able to create some mistakes. He was able to really get his hands on the football and just be one of those classic feisty Saints corners that plays at the line of scrimmage, plays physical football, but he's also got good length to him, pretty good size to him as well, and a perfect complement to Marshawn Lattimore. So Adebo, was probably more inconsistent too than Lattimore last year, considering Lattimore's been dealing with injuries and Adebo really had to step up and be their number one corner at times last year. So he deserves a lot of love for what he was able to do last season. Hopefully that continues into 2024. The New York Giants. I've got Darius Slayton, man. And a lot of people are going to roll their eyes and say, Darius Slayton is underrated. Like, isn't he just, not a good player? But here, let me put it this way for you. The New York Giants have had terrible wide receiver play over the last few years. But do you know who leads the team in receiving yards for 4 of the past 5 seasons? Darius Slayton. That's all I have to say. I don't even think Giants fans give Darius Slayton enough love. He's a good player. He's probably not a number 1 or maybe even a number 2 on a lot of teams, but there's something to be said about just being consistent and consistently putting up numbers and consistently showing, that you can play. Darius Slayton has had 700 plus yards in 4 of his 5 seasons, and he's led the team in receiving 4 of his 5 seasons. That's pretty darn good if you ask me. Quincy Williams is, of course, my pick for the New York Jets. Quincy Williams, I think, is not only good, but I don't think people understand how quite good he is. He might be one of the best linebackers in the league, period. Last season, he had a breakout season, the most run stops in the NFL with 52. But not only did he have 52 run stops for the Jets defense, and he plays on basically every single snap alongside one of the best linebackers in the league as well, CJ Mosley, but he also had the second best coverage grade in the NFL at linebacker, second to only his teammate, CJ Mosley. So that's a pretty darn good linebacker duo. Quincy Williams is the athlete, the speed, the ferociousness, the daredevil, so to speak, while CJ is the brains of the operation. But Quincy has been unleashed alongside CJ Mosley in New York. Landon Dickerson is my pick for the Eagles. Despite being a back-to-back Pro Bowler, I don't think anyone talks about Landon Dickerson when it comes to really good guards or just good Eagles players. I never really hear him brought up in terms of the Eagles' best players or the Eagles' offensive line. He's been the 4th guy mentioned in sentences. Mailata, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelce, of course, were the guys that were brought up. And nobody would ever mention Landon Dickerson. But Landon Dickerson, in 3 years in his NFL career, this past year, 17th in PFF grade at guard, never been lower than 22nd, 8th in pass blocking grade this season, and again, back-to-back Pro Bowler. Next, Keanu Benton of the Pittsburgh Steelers, a rookie this past season. I expect to take a pretty big leap in year 2. He actually graded as the 10th best pass rushing defensive lineman in football this past year. On a per play basis, he was very effective. He started 9 games thanks to some injuries up front, but there were some moments last year where Benton was one of the more dominant Steeler players, one of the more dominant pass rushers and all that. He had the 4th most pressures on the team last year, despite being kind of a rotation player. So look out for Benton, 2nd round pick last year. I think he could come into his own in year 2. Lenoir is my selection for the 49ers. One of the best, most versatile corners in football. I think Lenoir really showed me last year that he can play inside, he could play outside, he could play man, and he could play zone. He's a better man coverage guy than I would have thought. Last year, he showcased that ability with Steve Wilkes wanting to play a little bit more man coverage. I thought Lenoir stepped up, and it really feels like whatever this team, the 49ers, asks Lenoir to do, he does it. Whether it's play nickel corner, whether it's play perimeter corner as their number 2 to Mooney, Charvarius Ward, Lenore steps up and he accomplishes it, but he had the 5th most snaps in football at cornerback because he never leaves the field because he's rather playing perimeter or he's playing inside. He was 23rd in PFF grade. He had 3 picks and he had 20 stops, pass play stops, which was tied for 7th at the corner position. Michael Jackson, the smooth criminal Michael Jackson, is my selection for the Seattle Seahawks. I'm sorry, I had to do the joke. I'm sorry. But 0 touchdowns allowed. Michael Jackson, 11th highest forced incompletion percentage last year and 20th graded corner in 2023. So Michael Jackson, has been kind of a journeyman corner. He's played for Detroit. He's played for Seattle. He's played for New England, I believe. He might have played for one other team. But I always feel like every time I watch him, he plays well. He's one of those guys that's always right there. Like, there's times where he'll give up a catch, but he's like right there. You know what I mean? He always has tight coverage. And this past season, he didn't allow a touchdown, right? He had the 11th highest forced incompletion percentage. It's because he's always tight in his coverage. And he's played in a lot of different systems, whether it be press man or press zone a majority of the time. He is more of a perimeter corner. But I wouldn't be shocked if he played his best football of his career in Mike McDonald's defense this year. I honestly thought he was better. I thought he was maybe their second best corner last year. And maybe that's crazy. I don't know. But Michael Jackson, I think, is underrated. To the next one, we got Christian Izine, I believe is how you correctly pronounce his last name, the rookie nickel of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who was one of the best run defenders in the league at the nickel position. And this was one where, I kind of know like every player there is to know, and watching Tampa, I was like, who is that guy? Like, I remember watching them and being like, who is playing nickel corner for them right now? And it was a rookie, and it happened to be Christian. And I think he might be playing safety this year. He might be like their third safety / their nickel / maybe an outside corner. Like, I think he can do a lot of different things. So he has a very versatile skill set, but he was one of the more surprising players of last season. 2 picks, 1 forced fumble, and just overall, the Bucs have not had great nickel play. Even when their defense was elite, they didn't really have great nickel play, and I felt like Izine held it down last year pretty well for a rookie. And there's a lot that you have to be able to do at a pretty high level. You have to be able to stop the run and tackle. You have to be able to, set the edge. And then you also have to be able to cover and blitz as a guy that plays for Todd Bowles. So you have to be able to do a lot of those different things. So I think he really stepped up for a rookie. That's pretty impressive. Roger McCreary, another corner, is my selection for the Tennessee Titans. Had a breakout year last year. 0 touchdowns allowed. Played as an elite nickel corner. Had 20 pass stops, which was tied with Lenore and others as the 7th highest in football. 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception. Roger McCreary is feisty. Roger McCreary is in your face. Roger McCreary can play press man. Roger McCreary can play zone. He can do a lot of different things, and that's why I like him. Right? It showcases, those sacks showcase that he can blitz and get to the quarterback. He's feisty in the run game. He's physical. He's able to get in there and, sniff it out. And then also he's able to get in your face in coverage. So McCreary, I remember really liking him coming out of the draft, and he's proven to be a sticky cover man in the NFL. And last but certainly not least, for the Washington Commanders, Sam Cosmi, guard. Sam Cosmi, 4th graded guard in football last year, which was his best season of his career. And that's extremely impressive considering the Commanders' offensive line was terrible last year. But 4th graded guard, by far their best offensive lineman, and nobody's going to give him love or appreciation because the Commanders' offensive line overall has been dreadful, terrible, no good, right? But Cosmi has been the guy that's consistently been pretty good. In 3 seasons, he has never been worse than the 31st graded guard in the NFL, and he played 1,100 snaps last season for the Commanders. So he plays a lot, every snap, doesn't miss action, and plays at a consistent level on a pretty bad offensive line, which is pretty tricky to do. So Sam Cosmi is our 32nd underrated player, the Commanders' most underrated player, and those are all 32 teams' most underrated player in the NFL today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Remember, 100 likes, and I'll give you the 32 overrated players, one for every single team. Thank you guys for watching. It's Mitch. Appreciate you watching. Peace.